Pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to films I should have talked about years ago. And so, let's get on going with another film out there that I probably should have talked about quite some time ago, but let's go quite a bit recently. But not too recent, because, after all, if you don't remember, some time ago I've talked about DragonHeart 3, otherwise known as DragonHeart: The Sorcerer's Curse. Well, like I've said, I will in fact get to the sequels. It just so happens that I was able to find some time to be able to watch at least some parts of the fourth film in the DragonHeart franchise. DragonHeart 4, Battle for the HeartFire, released in 2017 as a Netflix exclusive, but also as a sequel to DragonHeart 3. But this one, yet again, seems to do a few things differently. Primarily, it doesn't necessarily give us the same old story, the plot line, or the lore that the third film pretty much gave us at the time back in 2015. This was only 2 years later, and yet the filmmakers probably wanted to try something different because they figured that the third one would not necessarily be as big of a success as they hoped for. Yet a lot of people have given some pretty positive reviews and some rather generous ratings. I will admit I was kind of holding back a bit on that one, but that's only because I kind of figured that maybe parts 4 and 5 definitely would not have been as good. It just so happens that with a 50% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a somewhat average rating on IMDb, plus a bunch of reviews out there that seemed a bit more honest, I can say for sure that this is probably the time where people are a bit more smarter with their reviews and with their context clues and information that they give out to the public. And it's about time that I might as well pitch in my share of the whole thing. My part of the take itself. DragonHeart: Battle for the HeartFire. A film that does in fact star the likes of Patrick Stewart. Yeah. I mean, they go from Ben Kingsley from the third film to Patrick Stewart. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's a bad idea to voice the dragon, but Patrick Stewart, I mean, this guy's a bit more suitable for Picard or Avery Bullock, but for Drago, yeah, it's not Drake anymore, it's Drago. So we've gone from Draco from the first film, and then, of course, there was A New Beginning, and then Drake for the third film, and now we got Drago for the fourth film. Like, really? I don't even know what the heck is going on here, so I can only imagine that part 5 is going to follow the same exact sort of format where they once again try something different, and yet it does not prove to be successful. So, I guess I don't really have a whole lot here to say, but, well, you know what? In terms of, well, the plot line, I'm once again going to have to pull up a bit of a teleprompter sort of thing right here. A note that I was able to jot down some details on while I watched the film. So, anyways, to basically put it into words, at least from what I can basically remember at this point, with the help of this, of course, simply put, this film happens to basically give out a bit of a storyline where a king ends up dying, and then, of course, there are a few heirs, twin grandchildren who possess unique strengths from the dragon, known as Drago, of course, not Drake or Draco. And then, of course, these kinds of powers that come straight out of the dragon and the grandchildren themselves are basically used against each other just to find a way to inherit the throne. Yeah, it's basically like the sibling rivalry, the sibling quarrel that apparently we've seen so many times out there. We've seen Thor and, oh my gosh, we've seen Thor and Loki fight each other to the death, but yet this was a much bigger example out there because it had been done way too many times, especially with the help of actors Tom Hiddleston. Oh my gosh, like, see, that's how bad this is to me. But again, I guess it's probably just no wonder why people gave it such bad ratings and average reviews were basically being put together. The 50% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, I mean, what did you expect at this point? It's at this point where we begin to realize that if a series were to go way too long, way too far, way too quickly even, where the filmmakers are taking not as much time to make a new sequel when they should. I mean, there have been a ton of great examples out there in history where filmmakers have taken as much time as they needed to make a sequel, and then the sequels happen to sometimes be better than the first one. Take James Cameron's works, for example. Aliens, that took 7 years to make. Terminator 2, Judgment Day, that also took 7 years to make. And on top of all that, you have the Toy Story franchise, which the first and second films were only 4 years apart from each other, but yet they were both successful. And then it apparently took 11 more years for a third film to come out. And being that that one grossed at around $1 billion, that one was at the time the most successful, and probably the most successful that Pixar has had so far. Then of course there was a fourth film, which took another 9 years to make, and yet that one did way better than all the others. I mean, seriously. When do people know that if you want to make a good sequel, it takes time to do so? Having to rush a film out there, having to do a lot of things your way, differently, just does not work at all for the most part. Of course, I got my part on the line to where I take a lot of time, practice, trial and error, and all that good stuff, just to make a sequel to any of my works. Of course, I released the Nerf Secrets Revealed feature film earlier this year, and you know what? Right around this time is where I'm going to begin production on the sequel. Yeah. Even though that will not make a release until June 2025, after my 26th birthday would have taken place, this is just a good example that I take as much time as I need to make a sequel to a film that I feel like could have been a lot more successful than it already is, but you know what? That's just kind of the thing. Having a ladder around you really can be beneficial. As for DragonHeart 4, Battle for the HeartFire, well, you know what? I'm going to have to be almost in full-on agreement with the majority of the population that has already given in their thoughts, point of view, and etc. on this film. For a score, let's just go ahead and not be very generous, unlike with what happened with Osmosis Jones, which I just talked about yesterday. 5.8 out of 10. Yeah, there really is not much else left to say about this. Considering how the topics are still fresh in my mind, I really could have gone on to bigger detail, but at what cost? There really is not much else left that could potentially be interesting to most people out there. And maybe it's probably for the best. And if you were thinking that DragonHeart would end right there, you'd very much be wrong. 3 years later, there comes yet another DragonHeart film. I will get around to watching that very soon, and you know what? I'm going to do as much as I can to try and appreciate the fifth film for what it is. But being that it was something that was released last year, I cannot guarantee that it'll be maybe as bad. Maybe they might have done things a lot better. But still, you never know what could happen out there. So if you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.